Today I have the privilege and honor of not only being with you all, but really also of being able to interview Dr. Dori Naerbo. Dori, I don't know if I ever say that exactly right. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Scientifically Beautiful, which is on the Life is Tough, but You Can Be Tougher network. This is really exciting because not only do I get to work with Dori, but she is one of my soulmates in life. We met in Norway. She does live in Norway, but was raised in the United States. And we became instantly connected, and we work on a lot of projects together. She has a master's degree. She also has a PhD. One of the most brilliant scientists and researchers I've ever worked with. I'm so excited about this because she is scientifically beautiful, but she's also beautiful on the inside and outside personally. So welcome, Dr. Dori.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christina. What a great introduction.
You are literally a beautiful mother, wife, friend, daughter. You've been, you have all these wonderful relationships, but you're also a brilliant clinical researcher, and you've run companies, you've run research, you're in the stem cell arena. And I want to talk today about all of that, as well as some of the things that we get to do together with International Science Nutrition Society, and with some of the formulations that we have worked on with case studies, and some of the things that we're getting ready to work on, or actually we're in the middle of working on right now. But I want to start with talking about you personally, because this podcast is about the science and how beautiful and different it is all over the world. So we're interviewing people in different countries as well as the United States, but it's also on the Life is Tough network. So being a scientist, going through your education and going through where you are now, you had to go through things, right, to get there. It was a challenge, raising children, doing your education, as well as working throughout that. It's a lot. And so we're going to start with just getting to know a little bit about you. I do want you to talk about your education and everything else that you're involved in right now, but I also want you to go back and talk about what made you who you are and how you got here, and even the adversity you had to go through to get here. I want you to go into just your life and how you got to this education and career, because that's one of the most beautiful things that I think about you. I actually do know probably more about you than anyone I'm interviewing on the podcast. And we have so many similarities. But if you could just take us back a little bit into how you got here and where you are now, that would be fantastic.
Well, as you said, I am from California, originally from California. When I got married, my grandmother actually told me that if you want to go to vet school, because that was my big dream. I wanted to be a veterinarian. And she says, if you want to go to vet school, you'll get a full ride. But I decided that I'm going to get married instead, and I'm going to have a family. And I did that. I took that path. But it's interesting how life is, and how life kind of, it goes here, it goes there. It's never a straight line. And you'll see, like, when I get to the end of the story. But so yes, I got married, helped my husband and his family with the family business, created a multi-million-dollar business by the time I was, 25 years old. I really didn't know anything about the business at all. It was just basically, I just learned it. I mean, you just had to do whatever you have to do, right, to create the business. And I actually became the controller of the company. Didn't know anything about accounting at that time, but I learned how to do it. Didn't know anything about sales, but I learned that. I learned marketing. I learned everything. I learned everything about the business and created this multi-million-dollar business. And then, as fate would have it, actually, I decided that, you know what, I'm tired of this. I want to do something for me. I was, like I live in Norway, but, in Norway, when you have a baby here, you get to take almost a year off, or 48 weeks with full pay. You don't get that in the US. I mean, I got 2 weeks off and I had to go back to work. And so like balancing a career, motherhood, and then there's no time for education. I remember I tried to go back to school. I was actually going to National University doing the night school. And I remember driving home and falling asleep while I'm at the wheel driving home because I have like a 3-month-old baby at home and I just couldn't do it. And I just said, okay, you know what? I'm too tired. I can't do it. So as a mother, the career pretty much kind of goes on the back burner because you decided to have children. So for me, that was like my first priority. I have to raise the kids. And then when they got a little bit bigger, I started back. I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to school again, try it again. And I thought, what do I really want to do? What am I really passionate about? What am I burning for? And I know I like, because of certain events that happened when I was much younger, being surrounded, with death and things like that, I became an EMT because I wanted to make sure that if somebody was going to die in front of me, I had the skills to save them. I knew what to do. I never wanted to stand there and not know how to do, like, for example, CPR, for example, something like that, or anything. I wanted to know any kind of life-saving techniques that I could do. I wanted to know what those were. So I became an EMT. I was top of my class. And,
Was
this
that in the United States, Dori?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in the States. Yeah, right. So, and I loved it. It was just the most exciting thing I've ever done. And I loved working in the ED. I mean, it was so exciting. And, because you get to go out on all those calls, and I was, anyways, I think we had a patient one time who she came in with severe burns, and the whole ED was like really tense. It's like listening to a crying baby. You know how when you hear a crying baby, how it really starts to get to you, gets under your skin, right? This
Right.
woman was screaming at the top of her lungs, crying because of the burns. And so I went to the chief on the ED there, and I asked him. I said, "Do you mind if I just go in and talk to her?" He goes, "Oh God." He goes like, "Please do. Please go in and talk to her." I said, "Okay." I went in and talked to her. I got her to calm down. I dimmed the lights down and, started patterning my breath like her, like breathing like she was breathing. And then I started taking her down slower and slower. And she was very calm. I walked out of the room. And then he said to me, "What did you do?" He says, like, "Are you like a hypnotist or something?" And I thought, "Oh my God, that's a great idea. I should investigate that." So I started looking at everything about clinical hypnotherapy, how that works. Cause I thought, because I knew being on the rig and everything that I was doing this naturally. I didn't even know I was doing it. Right. It was just a natural thing that I do. And so I went and got training as a clinical hypnotherapist by Gil Boyan, who ran the American Hypnotist Society back in the day. And so I actually had my own private practice. I had a huge clientele. It was I was really helping a lot of people, right? And so it wasn't that I would tell people like, okay, what the issues were. It was for me to guide them, to show them, okay, like let them have their aha moment. That was to guide them so that they could see it for themselves, because that's more powerful, right?
Right, because you wanted to show them.
Yeah. So I don't need, I might see it, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to guide you to it, right? So that you can see for yourself, because that's more powerful. And at that time, that wasn't, of course, that was not accepted at all. So I decided that, and I was actually going to nursing school at the same time. But then I realized also, because I was an EMT and I was top of my class, they wanted me to go to paramedic school, but I couldn't do it because I had the 3 kids. I was working full time, and Kurt was, my husband, he was gone all the time. He was doing his job. So everything, as a woman, we always have to take the back seat, right?
Yeah.
Because the husband has to go and make the money and has to do all this stuff, right? Which brings me to a point where I remember, I think I told you this, that when I was growing up, I remember I was in 2nd grade and I heard my mom and dad talking in the kitchen, telling my mom, "We don't have to worry about her," because I had 4 brothers younger than me. I was the oldest. And he said, "We don't have to worry about her because she'll get married, but we have to focus on the boys. So I never got any, attention like for school or anything like that. Everything I've done on my own. So, which made me a stronger person. I mean, I wouldn't take that. Yeah, I wouldn't take it away because I think of it like, it's like you're like a piece of coal, right? And then when you get that pressure, you become a diamond later, right? Over time, right? And so then what I decided to do, because I couldn't do the paramedic, I really wanted to do that. And I thought, okay, paramedic, PA, I needed to be in this medical field somehow. And so then I decided, after working in the hospital, I knew there's no way I'm going to be a nurse. I can't deal with that. I cannot deal with telemetry. If I can't work in the emergency room, I don't want to work anywhere in a hospital. So, because I think I'm an adrenaline junkie. So then what I decided to do was, okay, I'm going to go get credibility. I'm going to be a doctor. And so I went, enrolled in, I did an accelerated master's PhD program at the California Institute of Human Science. And I was sitting there with, I wanted to do clinical psychology. I remember when I was in high school and I used to read all the clinical psychology, like the Psychology Today was a big thing back then, right? And I thought, wouldn't it be great to be a psychologist? I want to do that. I'm going to do that one day.
That's funny. I thought the same thing. I loved Psychology Today.
I would read all the psychology stuff. And it's so funny too, because like I would read other things that would be so boring to me. But if I pick up a medical journal, anything like that, anything medical, anything like, I am like a sponge. I love that kind of stuff. So it could be about anything, but if it's science, yeah, I'm all over that. So then, as fate would have it, Kurt and I, we had 3 kids at the time. We moved, my husband's Norwegian. So we moved from California to Norway. And then I thought, wow, this is a big step, because like I couldn't speak the language. None of my education transferred here whatsoever. So I had to make a decision. Okay, what am I going to do? It's like starting all over again. And so I decided, you know what? I want to make the most amount of money that I can make, because like, why not? Right. So, So I went into IT because I had like a really great IT background.
Oh,
and
wow. I know this about you.
What's that?
I didn't know this part about, I knew you were in IT, but I never knew you went to school for IT.
No, I never went to school for IT, but I'm self-taught. I mean, I built my own computers and I did all this kind of stuff. Wow. And so then I got into like one of the top consulting companies here in Norway. It's like one of the top 3 in the world. And so I worked on some of the largest oil projects. I was the SAP technologist, did all kinds of different things. And then I actually, of course, I don't know how it happened, but I got into life science.
At the company.
I was going back to Washington, Philadelphia on the FDA. I sat on FDA roundtables talking about IT security and things like that. I wrote in the business standard for IT security. I mean, now remember, this was like 20 years ago, right? And then I was actually, I think I told you this, I was actually voted out of 57,000 employees. I was one of 17 voted to be in this guru school classification that they gave us, right? Yeah. And so, and then they taught us, how to present ourselves, how to be in front of a camera, like Sky News came in, were, doing these interviews and things like that. So, so after that, my group, I was the global knowledge manager of 8 countries, and our group got disbanded after 9/11. And then what happened after that, and actually because I had to change my education around, I went into organizational psychology because I couldn't finish my degree in the States because we moved here. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to take all my credits. I'm going to just go and do organizational psychology. So that's what my PhD is in now. And then after our group disbanded, I had 3 consecutive heart attacks back in 2005. Wow. Yeah. And
Did
That
you
really,
know, did you know, Dori? And I'm so sorry I keep interrupting you, but did you know you weren't feeling good? Were you prepared in any way?
oh no, it was total shock because at my age, I was only 47 back then. And but because of my training as an EMT, I knew not to ignore it. I just knew that I didn't feel right. And there was no pain whatsoever in the first one. I had the size of a golf. I felt like there was like a golf ball, like right in my sternum. It just felt weird. And I remember going up the stairs and thinking like, okay, before I go to the doctor, I have to put my makeup on. So I remember I went upstairs, putting my face on. And I remember coming back down and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm so tired. And Kurt just looked at me and he looked, I've never seen him look at me so strangely. And he says, he goes like, you really don't look good. You don't look well. And so he's trying to feed me, thinking about maybe she needs to eat something, have some coffee or something. I'm like, no, this is not working. So I went in and yeah, they told me like I went to the hospital and they said like, yeah, you've had a heart attack. And I'm like, what? I was like shocked. I could not believe it. I mean, like
No symptoms,
I had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. And then 6 weeks later, I had another one. And this time it was presenting just like a typical, like a male pattern, like, like the crushing chest pain going down the left side. I could barely walk. It was so bad. I was scared then because like here, you can't just go into like an emergency room. You have to first go to a doctor. You have to go to like a doctor.
So,
Okay.
so there you can't just go into an emergency room in Norway. You have to go to just a doctor.
If you live here in Norway, you have to call what we call our fastlegen, your primary care physician first. And so that's what I had to do. I had to call the primary first. And then they say, okay, go into this other center. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm only thinking about the golden hour, right? I have my golden hour is like being wasted getting to this other place. So anyway, so I finally get in, I have my testing done again. And the when I finally get to the ER, they're like, "Why, you were just here like 6 weeks ago." And I had a cath last time and there was no blockage whatsoever. So I was a little bit of a conundrum, right?
Yeah.
They didn't know what was wrong. And so when I went in for the second time, they said, well, you were just here. Like they couldn't figure it out. So they put me in intensive care for 2 days. Like they had this with being watched the whole time. And in Norway, when you go down, like usually you're in a ward of people. So it's better to be in the ward because you're not so serious. But when you start getting into like the 2-man room or the one room, this is not good. So I remember they kept giving me, I remember thinking when they gave me the morphine, I thought, wow, that's weird. Like before, back in the day, like they used to give you magnesium, right?
Right.
And an IV, but they don't do that anymore. But now they just, okay, they're giving me the morphine. And I'm thinking, geez, I'm still having the heart attack, but I just can't feel it.
Yeah. Because they had you on a machine. So you knew you were having a heart attack still.
No, they didn't have me on any machine yet, but I knew what it was. They knew that that's what it was, because of the way I was presenting. Yes. So they were giving me all the testing and stuff like that, but they give you the morphine, but you don't feel it, right? But you're still having it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about things like that. I'm also thinking about, oh my God, I haven't even had a grandchild yet. Like what's happening here? Why am I having this? What's going on? I don't understand. And so the doctor had told me later when he came in, he says, well, we don't know. He says, we don't know why you're having this. He said, you're probably just going to go home and probably have another one, but it probably won't kill you. He said, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. I was like, all right, okay. So normally I'm really strong and very resilient, but when you have something like that happen to you, as you know, you are psychologically open to like these kinds of suggestions, right? And I was really upset about that. I was more upset about that than anything else. And then of course, because it's a teaching hospital, my pressure and then they talked me into having another cath. I'm thinking, I don't need to have that because we just did that like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's no way that I have cholesterol buildup or plaque or something that is impossible. And of course, the risk going in. And so when the young doctor comes up to me and he says, they talked me into it, and then he says, I'm going to be the doctor doing your cath today. And I said, no, you're not. And you don't say that here because they just don't know how to take you. But I don't care. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and you're not doing it, right? I mean, how many have you done? I asked him, how many have you done? He said, he started like counting, and eyes rolled up in his head, and he started actually literally, I could see him counting. And I said, no, it's not happening today. I'm sorry. You just take me back to my room. If I can't get the old guy that's done 10,000, I'm not doing it, period. So, so they were all scurrying around. They went back in there, and okay. So they moved patients around. They got me in, and I had it done. And again, nothing. I was perfectly fine. So then they put me into an MRI study to see what they could find. And they couldn't find anything. They didn't know what was wrong. So this doctor, like I said, he was telling us that, like, well, we don't know what's wrong with you. You're probably going to go home and have another one. And I'm like, oh my God, now I'm really scared because, like, I have to do something. I have to figure out what's wrong. So I immediately became N equals 1, right? I became my own clinical research study, my own project. And for years I would chart. I would do the charting. I thought, okay, what would they do? Like if I was in the hospital, well, they would start doing charting. So I started charting myself. I charted everything down. I wrote everything down. And you know what I love to do is find patterns. And so I actually found a pattern. And what happens is that when a woman is in her perimenopausal phase, right, the hormones fluctuate greatly. And this is an area where a woman is really at risk for having heart attacks. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of research about that. This is actually what led me to stem cells. So, yeah. And then I had a third heart attack. Kurt and I were walking, and there was no cell signal, I remember. So now we don't like walking in that area because we know there's no cell signal. So we were afraid of that area. But you know what? He didn't let me drive for 4 years. He wouldn't allow me to drive by myself. I had to always have somebody with me. Like he had somebody make sure one of the kids were shadowing me when we would go out. And which was, it was scary. Everybody was scared. And so anyways, I remember in the kitchen one day, I said, wow, isn't this interesting? I mean, isn't it interesting how life is? I said. He goes, what do you mean? He says, well, I had to have the heart attack so I can get back into medicine because that's where I belong. Because it forced me back into the medical side of things. And I've been there ever since. So I will never stray from that because I know that's what I'm to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. Anyway, so after 5 years, my cardiologist, we did all the scans and everything. He had these big tears in his eyes. And I thought, oh my God, there's something wrong. He says, whatever you've done, he says, just keep on doing it. He says, because you've cured yourself. He says, I cannot see any evidence that you've ever had a heart attack.
Wow, Dori.
So that gave me the green light to complete my book because those between that period, that 5 years, I was writing and doing research. And so my book is, it's about my story, but it's also about research and telling women, trying to educate women on what they need to say to get them in a hospital, because there's many women that will go in the hospital and they will either get referred to a gastroenterologist or a psychiatrist because they don't know how to present the symptoms in the way that doctors are used to hearing it, right? That's the bottom line. I mean, that's the truth. And then of course, different drugs and different, I talk about the different types of supplements that are really good for your heart health, like L-carnitine, D-ribose, coenzyme Q10, that's like the triad for cardiac health. And so when I completely healed myself, I went into, actually, you know what? It was Kirsten, who at the time was, I think, 12 years old. She goes, Mom, she says, she came in and she says, why don't you look into stem cells? I go, what? I was like, stem cells? Oh, okay. Yeah, let me look at that. And so I'm thinking like, oh, she's like my little angel. You know, our children are like our little our little guides, right? And
Yeah.
so
I,
that's what got me into stem cells was her saying that. I started to research it and I'm thinking, my God, this is amazing. So I worked for a company that that specialized in stem cells for cardiovascular patients. I have spoken to thousands of cardiovascular patients over the years, and then I was in charge of the clinical research there. At that time, I was going through menopause, and you know what? When you go through menopause, you know, you hear those stories about how women, like, your mind is not, don't think properly, like your brain is in a fog. Well, so what I did to combat that was I decided I'm going to go back to school. I did a master of science in clinical research.
That sounds like me, Dori, because every time I think, well, I'm failing here, or I'm not I think, well, I just need to learn more, or I need to keep my brain activated. Because with Lyme disease and when I had the brain tumor, same thing. I thought, I'm not going to let this beat me. And even when I would hear, and I don't know if you went through this, but I would hear story after story, which were negative. And of course I experienced that too, but I didn't want to be that story in the end. So again, I think you and I are very similar. That does not shock me that you did that, because you just needed.
That's what I did. And I was thinking like, okay, I wanted to have that because it's going to help, with the research that's needed in the stem cell field, because, you really have to have an understanding of, the patients, and in terms of, the type of treatment that they're getting. But you know what? I think I told you this story. This is really interesting. So when we talk about, the power of the mind, right? The doctors called me up like a couple of years later and they said, Dori, we want to know, did you know we have a game that we play when the patients come? I go, no, what game is this? And they said, it's called Guess the Coordinator. And I go, really? And they go, yeah, there's something really odd. They said that when your patients, we've noticed that there's something different about your patients, and your patients actually are better. And we don't know why your patients are better over everyone else's patients. And
Wow.
we want to know, why is that? What is it? So they said we can even tell when the patient comes in the first meeting, we know, oh my God, that's Dori's patient, right? Or versus someone else's patient. And then what really startled them was the results that happened afterwards, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. My patients did better compared to the other patients. So this is why they were calling me to ask me, what is it that you're doing? Because we know you're doing something, but we don't know what it is because of the results. And I said, well, what I do is I actually optimize the patients first before they go for treatment, right? Because if you think about it, if we want to put stem cells into a hostile environment, they're not going to do as well as if they were in a pristine environment. At that time, we didn't have the other products. We had diet, right? We had the food. Food is the medicine, right? So we would try to clean them up as much as we could, and then send them for treatment. And I know that if a patient would tell me, or it seemed like, okay, the patients that would tell me that they somehow have a knowing, like, I know that if I get this is what's going to happen. They're already, it's already in their consciousness of what is going to happen. And just like they thought is exactly what happened, right?
Because of the power of their mind. And I got to tell you, in medicine and science, I know I've shared this with you. I've been involved with pharmaceutical biotech companies and nutraceutical, because you and I are doing case studies and we're involved in stuff right now. But where the people, either from their power of their mind and positive thinking, or people around them that are either meditating or praying or touching and giving them this positive information. I've had people that were going to die before we even put them on a molecule or human monoclonal antibody, they were better. And, it is a miracle when that happens, but it's also a miracle related. And we know this, right? We have a hard time admitting this as scientists and doctors, but these things can happen. And a lot of it is because of the energy of positive thinking. And the doctors and the scientists that won't admit that, and that won't, well, first of all, it's hard to deny that happens, right? We've all seen it. But the I think it's very hard for traditional individuals to notice it. And when they do know, it's hard to admit. Does that make sense? So it's really interesting. Of course, doctors that go into stem cell, scientists that go into stem cell are progressive. They think, in a different way, and they are not just closed in a box. They think in a very holistic way. They understand energy, but a lot of doctors wouldn't have even caught that you, as the coordinator, were making this difference. And I can see that just knowing you, your positive outlook on life is something that I think everyone around you sees. But it's interesting that in this environment, they caught this with you when you were coordinating, the patients for stem cell.
Yeah. And that was that was back in 2005. And some of the patients are still alive today because of those treatments and stuff like that. So
what patients did you guys treat? I've never actually asked that. And
well, back then that was only cardiovascular patients that we were working with. And so that was many, many years ago. So now today, stem cell treatments are different now. Back then we were using, a different type, they were being processed in a different way than they're processed today. But I still think and definitely believe that you have to clean the body first. You have to prepare, for, and also not just from that point, but mentally, right? Because you can take two patients, have the exact same diagnosis, same medication, same everything, and one does better and the other doesn't. Why is that? Well, one has a positive mental attitude and the other doesn't, right?
Right.
One of the things I used to ask the patients that I knew that, okay, this is the end of life. We have a lot of end of life talks. And I would ask them, what is it that you regret most in life? And you know what they would always tell me? It was that they regret not being there for their families. Like that now they want to be with their children. Now they can't make that up, right? They were too busy working and doing all this stuff. And for what? For the money. Even my dad said the same thing. I was actually my dad's transplant coordinator back in the day when he had a massive heart attack, and then he needed a transplant. At the time, his doctor was too busy, so I stepped in and did that for him. This was actually before. I don't know if you remember this. You're probably maybe you're. I don't know if you're old enough, but back during that time, we didn't have the internet then. You had to go to the medical library and do all the research on those old archaic, with microfiche and stuff like that.
I remember those big manuals that were like yellowish brown.
Yeah. And so that's what
I love those, by the way, because I always like to look up everything. So when I first started using those, I remember I could sit there for hours. But anyway, so you went and started.
Yeah, I did that. I went down to La Jolla University, and then I had to, was it La Jolla? Was that where I was at? Yeah, I was down in San Diego, and did all that, did all the research and stuff like that. Got my dad into Scripps. It wasn't Scripps. It was Sharp Medical. And he was patient number 26.
Wow.
And so I did all the patient coordination for him and everything. And then even his cardiologist said, "Oh, thank you so much for doing that. I know I'm supposed to be doing it, but I'm just too busy, but you got it. I took care of everything." But, that's just this typical, that's just me being an EMT, right?
Yeah. Well, it's you being you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things my dad did, and just to tell you, just to go back to the point of the power of your mind, right? My dad was one of the top engineers for NASA, right? So he likes the numbers, right? All about the numbers. And so he asked the doctor, what do you think? How long do you think I have to live with this new heart? He goes, Joe, he says it's probably 5 years or something like that. I said, Dad, why did you do that? Why did you ask that question? Because and you know what happened? He was doing fine. In fact, he was doing so good. They were just really surprised how well he was doing, right? No rejection and no problems or anything like that. But guess what happened in 5 years?
He died.
Oh yeah. Yeah, big time. I mean, like they said, like that all of his cholesterol numbers were doubling and tripling every day. They gave him like 23 different types of medication, antibiotics, whatever they had at that time to throw at him. Nothing was working. Nothing. They couldn't figure it out. He literally became his own self-fulfilling prophecy. So the power of your mind is so, I mean, we know now today there's more science that proves it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we do. But I hate when you have this prognosis, like with, I've dealt with a lot in research on and cancer in my
Mhm.
career. And we did these investigator sponsored trials, and the patients would ask, and I've been a principal investigator. I've also been a study coordinator. I'm sure you have too. And they would ask those kinds of questions. And I would say, there's not enough research and data about you in this personal situation to give you that answer. And
Mhm.
my answer to you is, you're not a typical case study. You're your own, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have an answer. And I know I understand people always want this prognosis, but I think it's actually negative to give it, because I've seen patients story, well, my own father, with head, neck, and throat advanced cancer, which has, you probably know this, you usually don't live very long. And
Mhm.
daddy's been alive for years, but if you would listen, what the prognosis was like 3 to 6 months. I think it's been 6, 7 years. And a
Yeah.
lot of that, I'm like you've got to clean the environment, and then you've got to supplement, which is, I really feel like you and I think the viewers of this are people on a journey like us for wellness and health, but we are, we jumped in together, making sure that we could continue to help people. And I didn't completely understand when I didn't understand when I met you exactly who you were. I just knew I wanted to work with you. And I knew you were this brilliant scientist, researcher, but I really didn't know all the things you had done in stem cell or IT or science. And so it's very interesting to hear your story. I believe personally it's your energy. And I know that sounds odd. It's not just your mind, it's not just your drive, but it's your energy, which is helping the patients that are in these stem cell research projects or stem cell, institute. Because I think you guys are doing that in Panama, right? Or different places in the world, the stem cells.
Yes, we do stem cell treatments in Panama. We also are doing we do some orthopedic work in Texas.
And you're the main person, right? Coordinating that, or one of the main people coordinate.
On the coordination side for the
Yeah.
Texas side, but on the Panama side, then I do like I'm in charge of the research and things like that.
And you're doing everything from autism to orthopedic, correct? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, that's true. We do all types of treatments there.
And do you believe, like your father or with you, this kind of treatment would have helped if you would have had this back then? Or do you think that it was more of a genetic issue? And the reason I'm asking, or environmental issue, or a combination of both. And I just had this conversation with Dr. Tina, about how doctors put things in this box, but
Yeah. I've never believed that mine is a genetic issue or that his was a genetic issue. I believe that it was a lifestyle issue for him because of the high stress that he was under, his lifestyle choices that he made in terms of his diet and things like that. He didn't take, because this is like one of the most reversible things that could happen is a heart problem, right? In my case, I tied this to the periods and things like that. I remember one of the gynecologists, she told me, she goes, well, we can fix that. We'll just give you an IUD. I said, I'm not having an IUD. I said, forget it. She goes like, well, you've had a baby. It's okay. You can handle it. I said, no, I don't want that. So I opted out of that. But and I don't have any cholesterol issue. I don't have any of the classic symptoms, but I was having these attacks, but still didn't know why. But I do believe that it was because of that. And the reason I know because I found the pattern in terms of being able to see that during those times when I was most at risk was during my period, was either on or before that time period. is always that time period. So
But most
then,
people wouldn't have even caught that if they were doctors or scientists. Do you know what I mean, Dori? Because you do have to look at patterns. And I think for some reason, we just accept a diagnosis as what it is and don't try to figure it out. But I think,
oh no, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't accept anything. I have to figure it out. I have to know the reason why. We have to get to the root cause. This is the whole issue, right? Cure the cause, right? So we
Yep.
have to get to the root cause to figure out, because everything else is just a Band-Aid. Like, when you take your medications, and I'm not saying don't take your medications, if you need to take your medications, you take your medications. But like, before I got involved with this project, I mean, I had no idea about heavy metals or anything. I thought all I remember about heavy metals was, okay, I knew there was mercury in the thermometer. And I remember as a kid, don't eat the paint because, there's lead in the paint, that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's been an eye-opening education of just how polluted we are, which kind of makes a lot of sense now. Why some patients do better, some, and some don't.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a lot of different things, because of the toxicity load that they have in their bodies.
Well, I have a question. So you work with some pretty notorious doctors, and we don't have to mention their names unless you want to, that are in that area. Because I don't believe a lot of PhDs, MDs, or scientists really completely understand the toxicity in the environment as well as in people, even though the World Health Organization, the CDC, all these different governments acknowledge it, right? And they know that environmental factors have impacted the increase of autoimmune disorders and cancer, fertility, everything from ADHD, any kind of cognitive functioning disorder. They admit that, right? It's open. It's in all kinds of reports. Like if you look at government reports on this, it's acknowledged. And what I can't figure out is, even though we understand that that's one of the things that causes the increase and can even activate an increase or change in a virus or bacteria or fungus because it just makes it grow, right, or change. I don't think that they're still educating on it. And I'm not sure why, but not until I got to Harvard did I really hear a lot about it. And before I got there, I was already on this journey, of really talking about detox. I do think in the pharmaceutical biotech, we touch upon it, right? And because whenever you go into those companies, if you're in the medical or clinical science field, they train you and you go into their labs. And so, but I don't think that they spend a lot of time, because instead it's like you said, they want to put a Band-Aid on it or just give you something, but until you clean it out, it's not really there. And one of the things you've done, you've developed these case studies, and you even are a testimony with your own life. And I do want you to share a little bit about that. I personally think your entire life is a testimony to what you can be and who you should be, because we're each very different and unique. And you have taken the gifts you've been given, and you're just at the starting point of even doing more, but you've really done so much with your life. I do want to hear from you a little bit about how important you think it is to get rid of bad things in your life, including, and you and I talked about this, emotionally, mentally.
What kind of bad things are you talking about?
Well, we've both been through some tough times. Dori and I have shared, this is different because we're talking on a podcast, but we're such close friends that we both have not had the easiest lives. And we've had to go through things, but, I think it's almost a daily struggle to decide, am I going to take a step to get rid of bad things and surround myself with good things? One of my things I think, though, is one of the first steps is to do it inside your body and then try to continuously do it in your life, knowing that there's never a perfect relationship. There's never a perfect friendship, or anything between a mother and a child or husband and wife or any of that. But I do think all of that plays in to patients and if they get better and how they react to medications or supplements or nutraceuticals. I want to hear your viewpoint on that, because you have a unique approach, kind of like me. You've got the psychology counseling background, then you've got the science background. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but I do want you to touch upon some of that stuff.
Yes. So where shall I begin with that?
Well, you could share with us, because I would love to hear, even though we work together and we work on formulas and we work on, clinical research projects and case studies, I
Mhm.
would like to hear a little bit about your personal journey in getting rid of toxins in your body and then supplementing it. And then I also, before we get off the podcast, want to hear about where you see your future. But I'd love for you to share. You don't have to share anything personal if you don't want to, but just where you see how important it is to get rid of the toxins and bad things in our life, in our body, and in our outside life, and then to put good things in. Because I even know, Dori, like our circle of trust and our tight circle, I think improves my health, for example. I know that sounds odd, but I do. I think having close friends and good people around you actually make your life better and then impact your health as well. So I'd love to hear your viewpoint, because you're the audience that's on this journey with us does not get a lot of opportunity to talk to a scientist in stem cells that's also in counseling and understands the whole scope of everything. So I'd love for you to just give a viewpoint on all of that.
Well, one thing I think, before I actually started on the products, I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to slow down. Like you kind of like start to forget things a little, not forget things, but just like you're just not like you were when you were 30. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, you don't know what I mean because you're not there yet.
I am.
Because you're much younger.
That's not true. I'm in my early 50s. I feel but I will say I've been detoxing and getting rid of bad toxins in my body, because I've had Lyme disease, I've had brain tumor, I've had spinal tumor. I've worked on that for years. It's a continuous battle. And I think it's something I'll always have to do because it's all around us, right? I don't, this is not your age anyway. Your cell age is very different than your actual age. You know that. And a lot of people don't know that. I brought it up on one of the podcasts, I think it was Yusha or Dr. Keshkesh, just saying that the age of the cell is actually different than the actual age. But you did share that with me one time. You said before you started with Clean Slate and some of the different products, you felt like you were slowing down, which I can't even imagine that, to be honest.
I know it was like, oh my gosh, is this like, okay, what am I going to do now? I felt like I felt the kind of like a slowdown. And then when I started the products, I remember thinking, my gosh, I literally feel like I'm 30 again. Like it was amazing. And to have that, clarity of mind, like the function, and just like being able to like, okay, now I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. While my husband is sitting there thinking about retirement, I'm like, retirement? No way. That's like a dirty word to me. Like I never want to hear that word. It's never going to happen for me. I'm going to work. I'm going to work until I die.
Hey, we're going to be working in a nursing home together, or we may be working.
We may be running it. We're not going to be in it. We're going to be running it. No.
We'll retire at one of our wellness clinics.
Yeah, exactly. So we're far from that. So we still have a lot of learning to do. Yeah. And I think for me, the products have just been amazing. I mean, as you know, it's helped my family tremendously because, like, say, for example, the birth of our little Mason, right?
Yeah.
That was so frightening. I remember, I think I called you. I was upset. I was crying. I was in tears.
I stopped. I don't know if I shared this that day. I had all these people in the office. I had Scott Pullman, who runs, I think commercial banking for SunTrust. I mean, I had Ted Baker, CEO Kalo. I had at the time, because he wasn't over here, he wasn't at Root. I just had all these people. They had brought in outside consultants, but I literally stopped when you called me about Mason. And I said, okay, this is it. I need to mentally, emotionally focus on Mason coming out perfect, right? And being this beautiful baby. And I think you and I share a unique perspective of understanding energetically how, nanotechnologists understand this. Energy can change anything, right? So we did focus on it. But no, I'd love for you to share the story with the audience, because I think they would love to hear it.
Yeah. So with Mason, Kirsten, my daughter, had gone into labor this had been like what, 3 days, by the third day, I mean,
Yeah.
she still hadn't delivered, her water broke. And like 3 days later, she's like still in labor and she was exhausted, So they gave her some, what did they give her? They gave her a sleeping pill. I remember that. I'm like, why do they give you that? I'm like, what are they doing? And so then they gave her a sleeping pill. Then they gave, I mean, I really believe her case was mismanaged, very
Yeah.
much so. And so basically, they induced her. They gave her PIT as well, like 2 rounds of PIT. They gave her 3 rounds of epidurals. They even gave her morphine too. When the sleeping pill didn't work, she was on morphine. And I remember she called me up the next day after that. I'm like, I couldn't even talk to her. She was like so out of it. And then she would just like fall asleep talking to me. And of course, I can't go down there because, this COVID time, right? So, I remember, so when I called you, she was like when the labor finally started going and she was finally dilating, she was stuck like at 8 for like 2 hours. I'm like, okay, my gosh, you're in transition. It shouldn't be 2 hours. You should be like, let's go. Why isn't it progressing? And apparently, he was in the wrong position, which they didn't know about. I don't understand how they did not know this, but he was like, his head was kind of, cockeyed in there. And, so when they finally, that's when I called you, and we were all working on him energetically. We were all working on him. When they put him on her chest, he was like a limp rag. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And they took him away. They whisked him away. And I said, okay, I need to know his APGAR score, 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 10 minutes. What is it? Give me the numbers right away. And then when I saw him, he had an NG tube. I'm like, well, what's happened now? Oh, he's in the NICU now. And I go, well, why? Oh, his respiratory rate is low. His heart rate is low. It's like in the 30s or something like that. And so they wanted her not to breastfeed. They wanted her to not to breastfeed, for her to give her milk to someone else, and that they were going to feed him. I said, no. I said, you go down there and you wake yourself up every 3 hours and you go down there and you feed him your milk. I mean, that's milk for him, your golden milk. I said, goes to him. Right. And I said, you need to, okay, well, probably this depression is because of all the drugs that you were on, that is being processed. Right. And then he has to process it too, because it's whatever you have, he has. So that's when I said, okay, I went down and brought her bottles of Clean Slate.
Yeah.
And she took a bottle like every day. Like she did like a bottle, she did like a quarter bottle every was it every 6 hours? Yeah, she was doing that. Well, she did quarter of the bottle.
Which you and I would never tell anyone else it's our own children, because most people start with like
we don't recommend this for other people, but for our family, that's what we say. It's different for your family, but for other people, we're not saying that. We're not, just so you know, we need a disclaimer. We're not recommending this for other people.
Red flag. Dori, I remember you calling me and asking me, how much should I give her? And I said, well, people start with 1 drop, they go up to 10 drops. And you go, I know that. She said,
we both knew that we should give her, that she needed a whole bottle, but we just didn't know how to give it to her.
And right? I said, I hate to say this, but if it were my child and she'd listen to me, because I have a 15-year-old, she doesn't always listen to me right now. So I said, this is what I would do if it were me or you. And I knew that if that would happen, not that it's a miracle at all, it's giving them something to get the toxins out. And when you give people pain meds, I don't know if you know the story, zeolites and orthosilic acids have been, and even vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, all that has been used in history to help people actually detox in alcohol, rehabilitation centers. So if you've been on all this pain med and all these things that have gone into your body, radiation, there's just, different things, you got to get it out. You really do, because otherwise it's there and it just stays there. And I would not have told anyone if that had been you. Like, I even believe that if that had been my own sister that wasn't a scientist, I probably wouldn't have told her that, because I just knew that you understood. And I just knew that was, what she needed. And I also wanted the baby through the breast milk, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. We needed to, yeah. So he turned around within 24 hours and they couldn't believe it, right? They took the tube out. I said, he doesn't need the tube. So And then I said, ask him what the respiration rate is. And she says, and so then it was so funny because she texted me the respiration rate. I said, how did you get it so fast? She goes, like, I read it off the machine. I said, okay.
My
But
mother,
anyway,
I'm
so
a researcher too.
what's that?
Well, because she helps you with research, and she's
she's very clever, very smart. So, anyways, yeah, it really, I honestly believe that saved him and saved him from, any possible cognitive damage. I really believe that. And he rebounded so fast, from it.
It's so beautiful.
From that whole episode. And it was traumatic. I told her, I said, this is a traumatic experience for him, being stuck like that for all that time, because like she was saying, like, why is he crying like this? And I go, because like it's trauma. I said, just keep on taking the stuff and give him comfort, and he's amazing. He's so strong. Even the doctors were commenting on how strong he was. We do have some root babies too.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. In fact, I know of another case where one particular person, she was getting gestational diabetes and was coming in for regular testing for that. And that's when they actually started the clean slate. I think she was probably about 5 months along at that time. And they started the clean slate around that time. Oh,
well,
can we see
I
the
haven't told the audience, so I'm going to take the time to tell them this. That's one of the projects Dori and I are on. I worked on some formulas. Dori also is the main scientist that leads the case studies for the company. We also have International Science Nutrition Society that does it, but Dori does it the Tuesdays with Dori, where she does talk about the case studies, and she does talk about some of the results. It's natural products, but because of those natural products, we're also in these other projects we're working on together in different countries, trying to help people get rid of the things they don't need in the body and then supplement, which seems very simple. But it's life altering. And that's why, you have if you look back through history, Dori, at the scientists and doctors that really made a difference, they did understand that. Like, you hear them say hypocrisy, like all of them will say, like, nutrition is the key to life. Do you know, you either
exactly
eat to live or live to eat, right?
Right.
And so supplements, like I hear people all the time say, well, Christina, you were in the pharmaceutical industry and nutraceutical, what's the difference? And my comment is they're both needed, right? Like you have to have a wide scope of things in your toolbox if you're really going to treat the human body or animals, right? You've got to make sure you have these things, but giving your body a clean slate, not to use that word too much, but giving your body a clean, like you brush your teeth every day, but to clean it inside, you've got to do it. And Dori, when I started on this journey to do this, I was attacked because people did not want us to come out with these products that could really help people. And I don't really understand why, because this, we both aren't like anti-pharmaceutical or anti-other companies. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to bring just simple products out that are supplements to help people. But I think anytime you make a change, you have to make a stance. And you were, of course, one of the first people that I thought of when the Life is Tougher, but Life is Tough, but You to Be Tougher series came out, were Scientifically Beautiful, because you were such a support for me. And a lot of that is because you've been through a lot and you were able to identify with me. And I was able to completely identify with you. But I want to take the time on today's call to tell you that, or on this podcast, to let you know that you're one of the reasons I was able to step up and be me, because I was apologizing, as you know, all over and over. Maybe I'm not good enough here. Maybe my education's not great enough here. And then you're like, Christina, you just be you. And if people don't like you, then have them move away. And one of the themes that I keep going back to as I'm doing this podcast, it takes this circle, right? This tight-knit group, and I mentioned it earlier, of support. And sometimes that support isn't naturally a child that you have or a significant other. Not that they're not important, but they have their own, things they're working on. And you were one of the things that came into my life that was like, oh my gosh, this is my person. Like, this is one of the people in my life that's there forever, because she understands me and accepts me for who I am. And it's hard to be different. It's tough to be in a situation where you feel alone because you understand, and you don't know this, but you made me feel less alone.
Oh, thank you. And I feel the same about you too. And I think that as we develop our tribe, that's what we do. We're developing our little tribe and things like that. The thing is that people just don't, I mean, to me, we have such a mission in what we're doing, and in an education platform that we have to get the message out to the world, because we are living in such a toxic environment. I mean, like I said, I really had no idea until I started doing all this research and looking at, I'm like, oh my gosh, every week it's something new, right?
Yeah.
And then we know that transgenerational toxicity is occurring, from your grandparents, to your mother, all the way down to you. And then it's just getting worse and worse, because like the soil is polluted, because, back in the day when they used to use lead in the cars, right? That just was spewing out into the atmosphere. People don't even think about things like this. They don't think about like I was just telling somebody the other day, I said, we are actually we are the parasite of the world, like the waste and the consumption that we do, right? Things that we just discard things. And we're just polluting everything. And then not only are we polluting the environment, but we're polluting our bodies as well, of all the toxins and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know how many chemicals I have on my face right now, but I have to go and detox that off.
You can put Restore on
my lipstick, right? Yeah, full of chemicals. I think I did a talk on that and stuff like that. But because of the toxicity that we have, we need to help people understand that. I think that's really important, because when they understand that, they're going to understand something else, and that has to do with their innate immune system, right? Your immune system can't work right. Your gut can't work right. Nothing can work right until this stuff gets, you want to have tight junctions. You want to have all these things, because to support your immune system. That's really critical right now, especially in light of what's going on. And so this is an education process that, we as mothers, we as women need to help other women understand that, because the women are the ones that are the caregivers in the families, right? They're the ones that we need to be reaching out to help them understand why they need these products, and not just the products too, but also nutrition. I mean, we did Cornell University together, right? Yes. So, and one of the things too, which I thought was really interesting, I don't know if you caught this, but in one of the lectures, I remember I thought, oh, this is interesting. Then they talked about heavy metals.
Oh yeah, no, I said I got a little bit in Cornell. Harvard did address it, and then in the pharmaceutical actually classes too, it was addressed. So but Dori, those are your top schools. Do you know that I think that are just starting to address it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but I was surprised. I was surprised that I was hearing it. I'm thinking, oh wow, this is really good, right? That they
actually I think said heavy metals.
It did. I kept it. I took a screenshot of it. Aha, heavy metals. Let's talk about that. But then when I started talking about it, I did still, like when I did my paper, they didn't like it because I started talking about it. Yeah, no, they weren't too happy with it. So I'm thinking, okay, wow, you mentioned it. So I thought I would just kind of elaborate on it. Yeah, but it's okay. At least it's starting to, come into light now, because, we have to look at the kind of food that we're eating, the plants, the animals, and all this kind of stuff. It's in our food. It's in the air we breathe. It's in the water. It's in the soil. It's everywhere. Yeah. And babies now are being born with 200, I think there was 251 chemicals already in the cord blood. It kind of cracks me up. So every time I hear patients will tell me, oh, I want cord blood, I'm thinking, no, you don't want cord blood. You don't want that. Full of chemicals, full of heavy metals and stuff like that. This is no good. So, no, I think this is definitely, a huge undertaking that we have to do. And then of course we have the other projects as well.
Yeah. Well, I I know that we don't have a lot of time, but I want to say this towards the end. I want you to give the viewers, the audience, 3 things that got you here, even through all the adversity, through moving to Norway, not speaking the language, through having children, having to restart school and then going to school again. Even, marriage with a career and kids is hard. It's a lot, right? And I know that you've been like me. You've been at companies where they criticized or had a hard time with you because you were a female and it was different, or you were a working mother. I want you to give people 3 to 5 things that got you here and what was important, so people can understand how to be tougher. Because one of the purposes of this is not just to share science and medicine and clinical, but to share personal stories and how we can help the viewers really in their own lives as well.
Oh, wow. How you can be tougher. You know what? Every time something happens in my life, or I have some type of adversity that happens, I always think of the silver lining. Maybe I don't realize what that is right now, but I know it will happen. I know one day I will realize what that is. So anytime anything happens, I think that I have this big crown on my head. It's full of emeralds. And every time something bad happens, I just bling, I got another emerald. So I have like lots of emeralds on my crown that I wear. And then I just like think when anytime this like, okay, like recently, as you know, I got 2 emeralds, 2 big ones. Yeah. So I always think of it. I think of adversity like in that way, and not thinking of things that are like not so much happening to you, right, or at you. It's the way you perceive it, right? So, then I think, okay, like sometimes when somebody like, okay, somebody gets angry, or somebody, does something, I'm thinking like, okay, well, is like, this is not my issue, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about like, okay, this is not your issue. That's your issue. And you have to push back. And you have to like, there's an energy about that, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it's like if I'm in a bad mood, everybody around me is going to be in a bad mood. So, but if I'm in a good mood, everybody feels that. Everybody feels the energy, right? Yeah, it's like when, see, so it's the same thing. It's like, this book, I was in graduate school, and I read this book. This book really kind of like, they ask you like, what book really had an impact on you? And one of them was St. John of the Cross, the Mount to Carmel. This was written by a Catholic mystic. It was really interesting. And he said something like, he came up with these things like birds of a feather flock together, right? So this is the energy that people feel like say, for example, you can have 2 drug addicts in a room. They don't even know each other, but they will seek each other out. They're like magnets, right? Because there's an energy. So we have we talk about these senses that we have. Well, we have another sense, that's an energetic sense. And sometimes we connect with people and we think, oh my God, wait, this person is just so incredible. We have such connection and stuff like that. And it could be like, oh my God, I didn't know, we didn't know this person, these 2 did drugs, right? But they connected this way, right? But anyway, so you like that energy that comes into you, right? You just have to for me, I just, I push that back, right? Like I just I visually see, okay, push out. It's not my energy. It's not for me.
We put mirrors around, and this is what I do. I'm like, if someone is negative and trying to hurt me, they can deal with that, but I'm going to be protected in here, and I'm going to see what my heart, in my mind is seeing, and let them see what they're seeing. Because I think some people actually enjoy being in a bad mood or enjoy conflict, and I don't. I see this. I'm like you, Dori.
Like on the Facebook. That's why I don't engage. Like, you know what? I used to think that if you don't engage, some people think that when you're having a conversation that you always need to put your 2 cents in, right? You always need to be like, you need to be contributing.
You have to respond.
Yeah. Some people
think
Yeah, no. You don't need to. So some people think like they think that you need to, this is some type of contribution, right? That you're engaging, you're contributing, and things like that. No, that's not what you're doing. And so I remember one time I was doing that same thing. Like I'm thinking, oh, I'm contributing. I'm saying what I'm thinking, and here giving all these solutions and stuff like that. And I'm contributing. And then I remember the management that we had at the time. I said to her, why aren't you contributing? And she said, because I know when to cut how did she say it? I'm so bad at these sayings. Is it the wheat from the shaft?
I don't
Did
know.
I say
I've
that
heard
right?
that before. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. See the
Yeah.
shaft from the wheat from the shaft.
The wheat,
Yeah.
I think it's called the wheat from the shaft. My husband tells me don't say those things because I always screw it up. But anyway, so it's something like that.
Yeah.
You have to know. And I go, what I said, well, what does that mean? She said, you have to know when to engage.
Right.
Like you don't need to engage in every little thing. It's like an energy sucker. I call them energy vampires now.
Well,
right?
and then my father told me one time, he always said it's better to listen, which is true, but it's also better to comment. But he just said some things don't deserve a comment or a response.
My point.
Yeah. And it's true. And so like lately, and I'm so bad at that. And I think that's the psychologist in me wanting to contribute, wanting to respond. But lately, it's not even worth arguing. Like I had someone, and I shared this with you on Facebook, that I've never met. But I was asking questions about the products that I made, and they said something very negative to me and very negative about me. And I responded with a very quick sentence, and then they responded again. And then I talked to you, and I thought, you know what? There's no response. I don't even know this person, and it's not worth it. So I think one of the most important things about life is you're right. It can be tough, and to get through things, you have to learn to just block it out and just not even have it around you.
You have to think about it. Life is short. It's so short. We don't know. It changes in a minute, and we don't know. We have to be present. We can't be always thinking about like, oh, this, like the next day. Yeah, that's great and everything, the future and stuff like that. But we have to live in the moment, like make every minute count. Because I can tell you, and as you know, because we've had life-threatening issues, right? I remember very clearly that when I had my heart attack, that I was thinking like, oh my God, like, how life wasn't the same anymore. It's like you take a back seat. It's like you're in a movie. I felt like I was in a movie and life was just going by me and I couldn't get in. I couldn't break through. I couldn't get in life again. And it took a long time. It took a while for me to break through that, because you come to a point where you're so, down and depressed. I never even knew what depression was like until I had that happen. I had no idea what that's. And I remember thinking, wow, this is what depression is like. I even told my doctor, I said, listen, I'm depressed. I can feel it. And she says, you know what she said to me? She says, you don't look depressed. I go, what? What kind of, you are a medical doctor. I'm telling you, I am clinically depressed. Like, but because I didn't look like it was, I couldn't have been, right? I'm like, oh my God. So when they try to give you the SSRIs, of course, me, I have to look at all the side effects and I'm thinking, oh, forget it. I'm not taking this. Forget it. I'm going to snap myself out of it. And you know what I did? I did diversion techniques. I love diversion techniques. I would take a rubber band, and I used to do this all the time with my clinical hypnotherapy patients. You think about something bad, you don't want to think about it. Your brain doesn't like pain, right? So I took a rubber band, I snapped myself. Every time I think about that bad thing, I would just snap myself. And pretty soon, you know what happens? You stop thinking about it because your brain doesn't want to think about it because it doesn't like pain.
Yeah, because it hurts. And it's actually hurts me to think about negative things. So I think those are extremely good tools that people need to learn. And they hopefully will learn from you because of this podcast.
This is Scientifically Beautiful, my podcast, and we are on the Life is Tough But You Can Be Tougher network. I hope you enjoyed, like I did, talking to Dr. Dori Naerbo and her wonderful story and beautiful story around science and her personal life. Thank you for being on this journey with us. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. See you soon.